Welcome, everyone, through all time and space to an all new episode of Weebs on the Weekends, a podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look at anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today's episode will be covering the news from the third week of October 2020 and give our thoughts on whether the first three episodes of the 2010 anime The World God Only Knows makes us sus or expect the rest of the series. My name is Jay Johnson. I'm part-time weeb and full-time English language sensei, and with me, as always, is my co-host Sam Martinez, part-time weeb and full-time automail mechanic. How you doing today, Sam?
Imanagam Maestro Johnson. Iliancho?
All right. Oh God, your pronunciation is always on point. Josh,
Thank you.
Yanjio. Huh, that's interesting. I mean, I'm going on an Asian bent for a while, but oh wow, I'm kind of stumped on this one too. A lot of the Asiatic languages do have somewhat of a like sonic resemblance with each other. So I'm going to go something with some kind of North Korean dialect this time. So something North Korean.
Ooh. I would say it was good that you mentioned Asian languages because this country they have a lot of Asian immigrants, and I'm gonna have to look to see if I can do a North Korean dialect. That's a good guess. But the language is Quechua from Peru. It is the native language of Peru, and as
Hmm.
I said, with Peru, they have a lot of Asian immigrants with Japanese, Chinese. But as I said, with this language is a native language for Peru. So like the indigenous people, they're the ones who speak it, and it's derived from a common ancestral language that was spoken through pre-Columbian in the family of the Americas, and it had a total of 8 to 10 million speakers, and approximately 25% of Peruvians speak Quechuan as their language. And so it's pretty popular down there.
Oh no, I'm familiar with Quechuan. I've just never heard it. It's really interesting that you like even with that kind of population of speakers, even though that is considered like quote unquote popular, like the rarity of those speakers and like the rest of the world, they're very highly concentrated. And even when they do
Mm-hmm.
travel to other places, they're like, oh, no one's going to know this language, so why do I even bother to say like, oh, I speak this almost extinct or localized language that you would have no idea what it's called or even how to say hello in this language. So, yeah, it's understandable that this is my first time actually hearing it, but that's so good. So, but yeah, how am I doing, Sam? I'm doing
Yeah.
pretty well because this might sound a little psychotic, but I had such fun killing my students in Among Us this week.
Oh,
um,
so you guys actually played Among Us sessions. Oh, man.
Yeah, so it is like the second month of our schooling, so our extracurricular activities have gone into full effect. So like the first 2 months are kind of like a setup 2 months kind of period. So everyone gets like back into the school vibe. They get a good sense of like the curriculum change since our school's going through like a transitional year. But yeah, so I'm an advisor with the student council, and during our first meeting, we had a basically a introductory period of Among Us, and I was using it to kind of introduce like a lot of interpersonal skills that goes on into the game, and I love the idea that I was using my position as a teacher to hide my identity as the imposter. So I was teaching the kids like, oh, what is med bay, or like, what is like, how do you like do a trash chute? What's a trash chute? Is it like a
Yeah.
British or American term? And I was kind of using the lesson to kind of
Oh. Uh-huh.
use to disguise my role as the imposter. And it's funny because immediately I regretted naming myself American. So like the first game was me as a crewmate, and my name was American, and like immediately I was just targeted. So um, yes, but after that I was an imposter and I changed to my Mongolian name, and like they were like, "Oh, who's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, who knows?" But yeah, had a lot of fun because it was also so all the extracurricular stuff got set up this week, as well as we
Yeah.
had our state basically states mandated tests. So it was like a good.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because you said last week was the end of the Oxford. No, it was some other English standardized testing, right? So all testing, right? So I guess like this would be your midterms almost.
Yeah, essentially midterms. Yeah, it was a Cambridge assessment for like kids that
Okay,
are like
Cambridge. Yeah.
my 12th graders that are getting ready for their university studies. But yeah, because like most of the Cambridge system does like a skip year. So my
Mhm.
country kind of does the same. If you pass your Cambridge assessment now, then you can kind of like take a year off before you go to university. But yeah,
Okay.
so pretty good week. Got some time killing kids. But how about you, Sam? How have you been?
I'm not gonna lie. If I was playing Among Us my second round, I would have renamed my character not the American or something like that, just to try and get
Hmm.
everybody off my back. But no, my week was pretty good. What I did something a little geeky and nerdy earlier this week. I told you once before. Me and my coworker, you've spoken to him before. We're big into martial arts, and his old gym that he went to for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it had opened back up and they were doing trial classes. And he wanted to jump back into it, and he invited me to go with him. And I would have to say it was a really interesting experience. As I've told you before, I did martial arts in high school, and it started out as taekwondo, and we then learned a little bit of MMA near the end of my studying. And when I went over there, it was just interesting because I went from a background to where we would stand up striking, which is like kicking and punching, and like maybe tussle a little bit on the ground. What we learned was just enough to do what we had to do and then get out from the ground. Whereas with jujitsu, it's mainly just focusing on being comfortable on the ground and basically fighting for control with joint locks and submissions. And it was just very interesting because much like in any other martial art, you have different types of fighters where you have people who are just strong and basically the bulldozer, they just go in and try to overpower you. You have those people that are quick and have high endurance, and their main strategy is to tire you out while doing laser focused techniques. And then you have other people that's sort of like a combination of the two. And it was just interesting because I didn't realize that you had those same type of fighters in jujitsu as well. And what I learned from my time in high school was just essentially super baby jujitsu. It was stuff that we learned in the first day of class. So it was like, okay, I know how to do these moves. And then basically they had the way that the class went was just a warm up and then doing a couple of exercises, learning a new technique, and then the rest of the class was essentially sparring, where you were paired up with somebody else. You would practice the technique that you just learned, and you essentially just spar with them. And it was just interesting because I was essentially refreshing what I already knew, and then I was put into this world where it's like essentially what I learned was their beginner first day stuff, and they were just expertly outmaneuvering me, showing me what they can do to get out of my locks, and then what I can do to try to prevent them from getting out of my locks. And it was just interesting because I got to see another aspect of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu that I hadn't seen before because I hadn't really immersed myself in that world.
Wow. So you had a very diverse, well, distinctly different week than I did. I was just killing kids in a video game, and you were learning how to kill people in real life, I guess. No, well, to subdue them, I guess, is a little bit
Yeah.
more accurate. But yeah, cool. So you want to get on to the news for today?
Yes, let's go ahead. Hit me with the news.
All right, so as always, the time codes are going to be in the description, but let's go into our anime news weekend roundup and talk about the third week of October. So, the big news, the big news of this week was that deb- premiering on October 16th, so last weekend, was the Demon Slayer movie Mugen Train, and
Yes.
it made 43 million US on its opening weekend, breaking so many records. And if you're giving that any comparison, Your Name from 2017, the Makoto Shinkai movie, Your Name only grossed in the 3-day opening weekend 12 million. So it kind of just blew the roof off the records for this.
Demon Slayer just said, "I am here" in the box office.
Yeah, basically, and it's actually for a couple of reasons because many cinemas have been keeping their mandates across the world. So Japan has just recently lifted their theater restrictions where back in May they had implemented basically you could only attend movie theaters if it was below 25% capacity. In September they changed it to 50 in response to like the government lessening their mandates. And then in October, most recently they said you can attend theater viewings only if there's no foods being consumed. So like everyone has to wear a mask,
Okay.
but there can be no food or beverage consumption. So like you can have the
Yeah.
concessions are open, but you can't bring any food into the theaters. And let's see. Oh, yes, because of you, Sam. The Funimation and I believe Aniplex of America has the distribution rights in the US. So they have early showings of the Mugen Train movie in early 2021. So are you excited? Because this is a follow up. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. This is a follow up to when we reported on this like 2 months ago that we weren't sure if it's going to actually premiere in theaters because of all things that were going on with the
Mhm.
big C. But
Yeah.
are you still looking forward to the movie now that you know it's made so much money?
Oh yeah, man, dude, and it's I don't know. I guess it's a little serendipitous too because, as you said, the movie theaters have been closed for so long, and I guess with the anticipation of the movie, it was supposed to be earlier in summer, but then it got pushed back to October. I would say, like I said, it's a little bit of the anticipation because of how well the first season did, along with the theaters being closed. Like it would add some bit of a kick to its popularity in the box office, but you said it was 40 million?
Yeah, 43 million opening weekend for a 3-day, gross.
Dude, no. Like, if anything, because you said Your Name was, what, 2, 3 million? If anything,
12 million for Your Name.
12 million. If anything, I guess because of what happened with the pandemic and with the theaters closing, that initial kick would probably made it 2025, but the fact that it jumps to 40 million, it shows that fans were ready for this movie, and I only hope that it does well because it is taking a full arc and putting it into a movie. I trust them.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like Studio Ufotable, which is pretty famous for their Fate Stay Night series, and the staff from the first season of the anime returned to do this movies, which you don't really see often. That this studio that's in charge of the season of the anime is responsible for the movie as well, because generally they outsource that to another theater or sorry studio that can basically replicate the character design and aesthetic of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
Studio Ufotable just brought their main staff and did the movie as well. And this is, of course, a follow up to the 2019 anime about Tanjiro becoming a demon slayer to basically seek revenge. For the murder of his family, as well as take care of his sister, who's been turned into a demon. And you can't really mention Demon Slayer without mentioning the popularity that was caused by Ninja. uh,
On Twitter,
the
the tweet.
right, yeah, with a tweet, yeah, and again, like his fan base is huge, and it kind of just caught traction. Same thing,
Mhm.
like with Michael B. Jordan doing the whole interview when he said he loves anime instead of girls, and uh, I guess it was back in early, oh yeah, when during the premiere of Phantom Menace when Samuel Jackson said he's a big fan of anime. So it's kind of like one of those things when people on the mainstream like say something like very weebish, and the world just blows up. Oh my gosh, anime is cool again. Yes, anime is cool again. Yeah, so yeah, and of course, like their numbers are like kind of reported by Box Office Mojo and this Japanese reporting site called Famisu. So yeah, looking forward to seeing the rest of the runtime for a Demon Slayer and see if it breaks any more box office. But that's the first news story, and let's transition right into the next one. I have a question for you, Sam. Did you celebrate Shiro Day back on the 20th?
No. And which Shiro are we talking about? There's so many.
Right, yes. Shiro Emiya. Did you celebrate Shiro Emiya Day back on the 20th?
Ah, no. I feel like I should have.
Yes, you should have. But also, you don't have a Twitter, so it makes sense that you didn't get to celebrate it. But, anyways, yeah, on the 20th was Shiro Emiya Day, and he's the main protagonist in the Fate Stay Night series. And it's a very interesting story, and I just put this in the news because
Okay.
it's always weird to see when the weeb community comes together kind of to make a movement or to make a troll about it. So on October 20th of last year, there was this big massive tweets. Oh wait, what do you call them? I'm not on Twitter either, but
So you're talking about just like a thread? I guess it's just like a thread. Like you could also do retweets, but I mean, so like there's this huge thread
oh
on
yeah,
Twitter.
yeah. So okay, a thread. Yeah, thank you. Yes, all you kids and your young terminology. But anyways, yeah, a trend where basically users change their profile picture to a picture of Shiro.
Oh, I remember when we did that back in college. Whenever we were trying to pick on one of our friends, we all changed our profile pictures to profile picture of our friend. It was pretty funny. But yeah, so
Exactly. So basically, it was where a bunch like it was. I should have wrote down the metrics of it, but basically, all these users came together. They were like mentioning the quotes that Shiro Emiya is like kind of known for. Like one of his most famous lines is like, "You're if you die or like if you kill, you die." I forgot. It's a very bad translation, but
yes.
yeah, it was basically a giant role play by very many followers of this one trend. And basically, this is the second year running that has happened. So I'm very interested
Oh,
to
okay.
see if it happens next year. So maybe we'll revisit this in basically a year's time, and hopefully you'll have a Twitter by then so you can participate, Sam.
I'm actually kind of thinking about it now. Now that I know that there's a Shiro Emiya Day, I just might do it. I don't know. I've always been apprehensive about Twitter because of all the unnecessary stuff that goes on there. But it's good to know that there's this kind of unnecessary that happens on there too. So my views on Twitter are changing ever so slightly.
Oh, good. Yes, join us in the modern day. But on to the third story, and not sad news, but it's just interesting that it's happening right now. But there is a new convention in development called Anime Frontier, and
Okay.
it's being powered by Crunchyroll, which has this big program going on, the Powered by Crunchyroll kind of initiative where it was established back in 2017. This also includes like AWA, which is Anime Weekend Atlanta. They
Hmm.
switched over to being supported by Crunchyroll as well as Anime Boston, Anime NYC. So, Anime Frontier is the convention that will be happening in Fort Worth, Texas. And it was originally scheduled for earlier this year. I was actually looking forward to it because I was supposed to go to um, not this event, but an event called Burning Man. And it was kind of in my
You were gonna
schedule.
go to Burning Man?
Yeah, but I would have had to get out of school early last year, so that was not a really option for me. But anyways, yeah, so it was originally scheduled for May 8th of this year. It was pushed back when all the big C mandates came under like quarantine warrants,
Yeah.
and then it was moved to May 14th, 2021. And then the news story today is that it's been pushed back again to December 3rd, 2021. So
Oh
for
wow.
this event. Yeah. And it's just interesting. And I wanted to get your opinion, Sam, if you think this is going to be a new resurgence of a lot of these conventions being pushed back.
I like the location because I've been to Fort Worth, Texas before. I was there studying for my prosthetic exam, and I'm trying to think. It's right there outside of Dallas. I think Dallas. If not Dallas, it's one of the other bigger name cities in Texas. So it's a good location. They have a lot of stuff that you can do over there. But the fact that they pushed it back to December, I don't even know of any conventions that happen during December because it's a holiday season. Have we heard any word about any of the other conventions being pushed back? I just know about, I think it was Comic Con was pushed back to September next year. If it wasn't Comic Con, it was another big one. And
No, you're right. It's just that I put this in the news
yeah,
briefing because it feels like it's kind of way too early to kind of push back something that was already pushed back so soon, because now it's like what it would be like 15 months from now essentially. And like
yeah.
you said, yeah, other conventions have done this, like they're kind of pre-planning to push back, but this is kind of the furthest that a convention has been pushed back preemptively, especially if things are supposed to be getting better.
I would say it's a good call because you honestly don't know what the future is going to hold, and at least having it pushed back that far, you would most likely be in the clear. I don't, me personally, I wouldn't have pushed it back as far as December. Maybe next October or September, around those lines. That way, it's not too far away from its initial date, but it's just far enough. Is this with this convention? Is this the first time that it's going to be held? Or has this been held before?
Yeah, exactly. This is like the inaugural event for the anime frontier. So yeah, so like it's
Oh,
May is kind of like prime convention time. So it's weird, like you said, Sam, to
yeah,
push it into December, where December is kind of a big holiday celebration festival kind of time for the U.S. And even more so because as soon as December, or sorry, not even December, but as soon as Halloween is over, people are already in Christmas mood. So it's
pretty
weird
much.
that it has been placed in December, but also next December.
With this being its inaugural debut, I can understand them being cautious. And even though this is overly cautious, this is still them protecting their investments. Whereas something that's more established, like AWA, MomoCon, or DragonCon, because they've held different conventions throughout the years, they can be pushed back, and people will be like, okay, I know that they've done this convention so many times before. I know they're going to do it again. I trust these guys. Whereas this is the first time that this convention is doing so. I don't know if other conventions will take cue from this one, just because this one is just trying to start up itself. But if they do end up having to push back, I can see them trying to push back to maybe July or September if their dates are earlier in the year. I don't see them pushing back as far as December.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So I think that is one more news story that I have to share, because not much of a news story, but I think it's interesting that we can probably keep track of this as it develops. But last news story of the week is
Okay.
that Netflix has announced a business alliance with Studio Nas, Studio Science Saru, and Studio Mappa. So
Mappa?
it's really,
What?
yeah, yeah. So
Awesome.
it's interesting just because from a financial standpoint, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge now that Netflix is like so in debt. They're like billions of dollars in debt because they were really founded as a archive for properties instead of
Yeah.
what they're doing now, which is like creating properties. But yeah, so they've made a couple alliances in the past with Studio Production IG Studio, or actually it's Wit Studio and David Production Studio. So, but these three new studios that they have a business basically relationship now is Nas, which was responsible for this year's ID Invaded,
Oh, they
Science
did
Star
that one.
Rule. Yeah, so they have a long like most of these are like basically under the radar kind of companies, so it's not surprising that Netflix is trying to get them under their umbrella. But Science Sorul, which is responsible for Japan Sync, which I kind of can't recommend for how
Oh, I've heard.
horrifyingly
Yeah.
heartbreaking it is.
Is
So,
it like
but
Grave of the Fireflies?
oh, that's a perfect parallel. Yes, it is definitely like that. If
Okay.
you want to see people suffering, there's also this, oh, it's a live action movie. It's not even live action, it's just real people. But it's basically people surviving during a tsunami. And you just see people's homes and people getting washed
Hmm.
away by tsunami. So it's basically that parallel, but you're following like certain people and they struggle, they die. Not to spoil anything, but yeah, it's just like a whole tragedy you're watching. And if you like misery, things soaking in misery, then I guess it's for you. And of course, Studio Mappa, who's responsible for the Noblest adaptation of the webtoon series, as well as it's not jujitsu, it's Jujutsu Kaisen,
Yeah,
which I always
Jujutsu
have to
Kaisen.
remember. Yeah, I always have to remember because it's not jujitsu, even though you think they do use martial arts in the show, but it's not jujitsu, it's jujutsu. So, anyways, but yeah, it's just like it's weird that they're doing this now because I mean, again, it makes sense. It's just weird that they're getting all these companies at the end of the year. So I guess they're kind of laying the groundwork to see where these companies are going. And uh, Netflix is like famously landlocked, or sorry, region locked kind of service. So like you have to use a VPN to access the
Yeah.
Japanese Netflix, which has so much more anime on it available than a lot of other countries. So Sam, are you a VPN user and do you have Netflix?
I have Netflix. I do not have a VPN. I should probably invest in one. I'm actually kind of surprised that Netflix doesn't allow more anime across the US. I guess because they, even though it is becoming a little bit more popular, it still is a bit niche, and that whole the anime genre, it can be overwhelming to a lot of the people who don't particularly care for anime. And I mean, it's a different target audience too. Interesting that Netflix is teaming up with Mappa, so I can see them trying to make more original works. I've seen Doro Hedoro, which was another Mappa product that they did. That's over here in the U.S. and as crazy and as violent and insane as that show is, it's over here in the U.S. So I don't know why. I guess maybe it was probably one of their testing anime to see what would work over here in the U.S. To see like how much exposure to anime that they can throw over here in the states, and not completely turn people off from Netflix, which I don't see that happening.
Yeah, that's fair. And also, they're also partnering with, again, they've done partnerships before, but the one that I
Mhm.
forgot to mention was that they partnered with Studio Mir, MIR, and that's the South Korean anime studio that was responsible for Legend of Korra and,
Oh,
um,
word!
sorry, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about Voltron, Legendary Defender. So they've always been
Oh,
rumored
yes.
They've always been rumored that Korra is going to get another season since how the series ended was kind of very much a cliffhanger. And given that,
How was it a cliffhanger? I mean, it was an awkward ending, but a lot of, well, I don't know. I don't want to say awkward. It felt a little rushed, but like a lot of the threads or the loose ends, they were tied up. So I don't see why people think that it was a cliffhanger.
well, I guess rushed is the better word to use because they just, well, not to ruin the ending of Korra, but it's basically a walk into the sunset kind of ending. So it's kind of more like there is a epilogue that people are kind of expecting to like delve into with a full animated series versus just reading a comic book how they did with Avatar: The Last Airbender with I believe that graphic novel is called The Search. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I'm not surprised given that Netflix is going to be doing the live action adaptation. If making this partnership with Studio Mir, they're maybe going to delve back into Avatar, Korra, and that kind of cliffhanger wrap up.
No, no, I can see because a lot of people liked the Last Airbender comic books, and I can see them trying to team up with Mir to, if not do two avatars at the same time. One where it's a continuation of Last Airbender, leading up to Republic City, and an epilogue. I mean, it would be good to see Korra as a spirit guide for even a new Avatar. You know, who knows what the big wigs are thinking about? I just don't want them to mess up our favorite franchises. You know.
Yeah, that's fair as a fan of a series or property. But the one studio that I do think they should partner with is uh, Global? No, not Man Global. It's Man Globe, which is the animation studio of the anime we're about to review. So that is a segue.
Hey,
But
Segway!
yes, so we're talking. So, anyways, that brings an end to our anime news highlights of the week, and we're about to talk about the 2010 anime, The World God Knows. Only God knows. So, Sam, you picked this. I had the pick last week with High School of the Dead, and you decided to pick this week's anime, and it's a very curious one. It's about a basically a intelligent otaku nerd that has problems with girls. Is there any reason why you picked this one?
That felt a little targeted question, Jay. But no, the reason why I chose this one is because it's not stereotypically my choice. I know back in our college days, I had seen a little bit of this anime, and it was funny. It was what we saw was a little bit of the third season, and I felt as though we didn't really have to broaden our repertoire or our library, because this one it really delves it a little bit with um, not necessarily gamer culture, but at least taps into it. We've done one other anime where it was based off of a video game, where it was just basically talking about the franchise. But with this one, it just peers a little bit into video gamer, or at least like there is a video gamer that is the main protagonist. So I figured it would be a good addition to our weekend talks. And what about you? Have you seen or heard of this anime before I had put it on the list?
Yeah, well, it's kind of iconic because again, we've been talking about like relics of the past, and 2010 was a big year. I mean, we just covered
Hmm.
High School of the Dead, which is kind of iconic for how its hyper violence got crazily sexualized and how it basically had a meta commentary about like American tropes, or at least how Americans tell the zombie kind of genre. And this one's kind of sets in like kind of that, I don't want to say bad reputation, but it was definitely approaching a topic that really hit a lot of people in the wrong spot because it was giving somewhat of a negative view on gamers and how like otaku culture is kind of presented as just being antisocial, degenerates, not knowing having any personal skills or any real world ambitions. So I kind of heard it through that lens first. So I'm glad we got to
Okay.
revisit it now. And so before I haven't seen any of it. I just knew that it's, based on a manga series. It has 3 seasons and an OVA. But
Hmm.
yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about it though? Because I'm kind of confused.
All right, I'll go ahead. I'll give a little bit of a summary. Talk a little bit about the first few episodes, and then we can discuss. See if I helped give you some clarity. And so, as I said before, our main protagonist, his name is Keima Katsuragi, and he is an avid video gamer, and he is so deep in his game. He is known throughout his high school as Otomega, which is a derogatory term for him, combining the words otaku and megane. And megane just means glasses. So essentially, they're just picking on his lips and calling him an otaku. The thing is with him, his sort of games that he plays are dating simulations. And he is so proficient at these dating simulations that he has a forum online where he calls himself the capturing god, and he offers advice to other players so that they can find the typical ending or route that they want in a specific game that they played. I can't remember the name or the number of games that he said he played, but it was something completely over the top. I think it was like over 200 something type of games. One day he's viewing his emails, going through his thread, giving off advice, and he sees an email basically challenging him, saying, "Oh, you said you call yourself the capturing god. Do you claim to being able to capture everybody?" He takes it as a challenge to his self-proclaimed slash earned title, and he responds to the email. And it turns out that by doing so, he accepted a contract with a devil, or not a devil, but a demon from hell named as Elsie. And basically, that contract ties his fate to hers, and they have to find these things known as loose souls, which are souls that escaped from hell and begin residing in people. The only and her job is to get those loose souls and to take them back to hell. But the only way that they can get the loose souls is by romancing the person, because loose souls inhabit the hearts of those that they possess. And so essentially, he, being a Katsuragi, has to use his video game skills in physical practice in his real world and try to capture or subdue these girls romantically so that Elsie can capture the spirit in their hearts, all Danny Phantom style, and put them in her special thermos so that she can take them back to hell. And that's essentially the premise of the show. And in the first 3 episodes, we see him conquer two girls. And did I help clear up anything for you, Jay? Or do you still have some more questions?
Not so many as questions now. It's just that, do you think is Fate Stay Night considered this type of genre?
I would say a little bit of. I haven't played any of the games, but from what I've seen, it seems as though there is some dating simulation factors that go into the routes that you can go into. It seems to mainly focus on the battle, whereas you have the servants fight against each other, and basically in the game you have to collect as many servants as you can, like Pokemon, and basically use them strategically so that you can try to win the Holy Grail at the end. And in doing so, you have to make, like, I think there are decision trees where essentially the relationships that you forge throughout the game affects the outcome as well. So it's not necessarily just the people that you pursue romantically, but I think it takes a Mass Effect approach where it's, you can choose, who you're friendly with, who your self-proclaimed enemies are along the way, and it affects the story too. But then again, this is from somebody who only watches the anime and who hasn't played the video games.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. So it's really interesting that, I mean, I made that comparison just because
Yeah.
I have very limited knowledge of the Fate Stay Night universe, multiverse, whatever it is, but I'm
Hmm.
very familiar with, these are called Bishojo Bishojo games.
Okay.
Bishojo just means Japanese for pretty girl. So
Yeah.
basically just pretty girl game. So it's basically centered around, yeah, like you said, it's basically a dating simulator, but it's like choose your own adventure, where you basically pursue the romantic interactions with like attractive girls. We talked about, wow, I don't know how long ago, but probably 10 episodes ago or more, about Hokoki, which was the ultimate game or maiden
Yeah.
game, which is geared
That
towards
yeah, that was the one I was referring to.
girls uh, pursuing hot guys or
Yeah.
attractive guys,
Hmm.
where Bishojo games, actually, they're also called Galga. Galga meaning gal game.
Hmm.
So I guess that's just shorthand for it. But anyways, and basically it's just a reverse. So again, like like you said, like these are two opposite perspectives on dating relationships, and it's really interesting in these first 3 episodes. But I kind of want to get, because I think you probably like the series more than I do.
How so?
Oh, because I mean, uh, I wanted. talk a little bit more about the studio first, but
Oh, go ahead and talk about the studio. I don't really have any information on that.
oh yeah, I mean I like being knowledgeable about animation studios and their business, but yeah, and again I don't know how to pronounce this name, but it's Manglobe. So they're
Yeah.
responsible for Shinrai Shampoo
What?
and the
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's just like interesting when you see what studios like their diverse hiring process with
Yeah.
directors and key animators that you never really know unless you're like Studio Trigger or Studio A1 Pictures that they have
Mhm.
like a singular visual style to them, but like a lot of studios can just go under the radar and like have these like diverse productions, and you have no idea. And Studio Manglobe is like more known for their original properties, so
Mhm.
Shinrai Shampoo, Ergo Proxy, but they're also known for, so I guess this doubly known for their adaptations too, because they're also responsible for this as well as um, oh, what's it? Not Gangster. No, it is Gangster.
Oh, they adapted Gangster too. That explains why I like the music in this show. Like, or at least in particular the openings. I like the first opening and the third opening. I was wondering why I was getting called to those like why like the music in those openings resonating with me a little bit. Now I can understand why, because that studio was always good with their works and the music that they used in them.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's one of those things that kind of tell you when a studio's like involved with a production is like they do have like kind of a key thing they focus on. Like with David
Yeah.
Productions, like JoJo and Fire Force, they focus on sound design, which I'll always bring up because God, I love sound design. But anyways, but yeah, so it's really interesting that the studio is like in charge of those kind of properties as well as the director who is, oh God, his Japanese name is so hard. But anyways, his name is director Shigehito Kayaki, and he's the director of Blood Blockade Battlefield and Beyond.
He
That's
did
where I know him
BBB.
from. There we go. Yeah,
Oh my
BBB. Yeah,
goodness. Yes.
yeah,
BBB was fun. Okay. Okay.
yeah. Again, so
Now
it's
I
like
can
such
see
a
why you said what you said.
okay, good. Yeah, so it's just a weird, again, like some animes just have like a weird mashup of things. Like, you don't think the studio that did Samurai Champloo and the director that did BBB were in charge of this property.
I
So it's
know.
just like nice things to say about that. The animation's always on point. Again, sound design, background design, like character design is all on point for this. But the thing I want to say about why I don't really care for this and why I'm going to put it in the sus. So just to say why it's sus
Okay.
to me is that maybe it's just it's depicting a video game I don't like. So like, like if you don't like a genre for the reasons of that what the genre is based on, then you can't really
Mhm.
get into something even though it may be the best version of it. And I think this does slide into like the best version of it because there's technically a harem, but technically not a harem
Yeah.
because there's this weird like the
Oh.
capturing policy of these evil souls kind of
Yeah.
has
Yeah. Yeah.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
weird
So
effect on the girls.
yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that because it brings into the title, and I guess like a little bit of something that I wanted to talk about too. Whereas when when Elsie captures the loose spirits, Danny Phantom style, I'm still saying that because the first time I saw that, I was like, "That's the Fenton Thermos! That's the Fenton Thermos!" Because like when she captures the loose spirits, it seems like the host of the spirit ends up forgetting all the interactions and the pursuits of Katsuragi to try to romantically entice them. However, Katsuragi still maintains the memories that he has, which is why it's called the world that God only knows, because he only remembers what he did, what happened. And it seems as though everybody else in the school doesn't remember this either, but he still remembers the romantic conquest. Real quick, because I was when you were talking about the production studio, it made me want to look a little bit into it because into it I mean the voice actor, because I had hopped back in between the sub and the dub. And when I watched the sub, the voice of the main character Katsuragi was familiar to me, but I couldn't remember where I heard him from. I thought that it might have been from the guy from Konosuba, just because the antics that he was saying, it was in that similar key. But it turns out that the voice actor was Hiro Shimono, who is Connie Springer in Attack on Titan, as well as Zenitsu from Demon Slayer. So I just wanted to put that out there. I figured out why I recognized his voice. But what was the main point that you were saying again, Jay? Just trying to rein it back in. You were saying something along the themes of the show that didn't quite vibe with you.
I mean, you kind of just said it yourself also,
Hmm.
is that, and I don't want to think that they were very conscious of this, but it has this, maybe just because we're viewing this in like the climate of 2020, is that there's this weird allegory. I don't know if that's the right use of that, but
Yeah.
allusion to getting roofied. Kind of, I don't, again, like,
Wow. Okay. Okay. All right.
again, just viewing things through a modern lens, or, the things that we experience. And, that's again the whole purpose of revisiting things after like a decade, is that,
It's not like Katsuragi is doing this on purpose, okay? Because just so that our viewers know, when he signed the contract, he essentially he unknowingly put his life as well as Elsie's life at stake. So if they can't catch the loose souls, both their heads get cut off because of the collars that they have to wear because of the contract. So, I just wanted to make that clear moving forward because you brought Rufy up. It's not like he wants to do this like some people do out there. That's all.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I was going to make that clear. I mean, it's just like, it's not an intentional thing, it's a side effect to what he's doing. So again, like, he's not going into thinking like, oh, I'm going to roofie this girl. It's just a weird progression of the capturing process to capture these
Yeah.
souls, is that he has to find the, essentially, the insecurity, or the way to open these girls, their hearts up, basically finding the thing that's bothering them, the thing that's like blocking them to having like a fully developed social relationship with other people. And
Yeah.
then the way that the capturing happens is that he kisses them, essentially, and then they immediately forget everything he's done. So again, it's just a weird thing to view that order of process, is that he develops a personal relationship with them. So like in the first episode, which is called Love Makes the World Go Round,
Mm-hmm.
is that it's about a sprinter who's basically afraid of failing, and he basically shows her like support. He's there for her emotionally when she's like having these moments of doubt, and creating banners, and like just being there, even though she intentionally sprains her ankle. Actually, that's a fake out, but she
Yeah.
pretends to sprain her ankle so she can get out of her track meet. And then he basically says, well, you just need to have more self confidence, kisses her, and then she forgets that they even had that interaction, and then she goes about in the track meets to competition to win. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just a weird, again, it's like, it's just off, it's not off putting, it's just like, when you're operating with that kind of social awareness, it's kind of a weird feeling that you get from it.
Like you said, it's interesting because, as you said, he makes the characters grow that he has to interact with Ayumi. That's her name. With the track and field star, he makes her more confident in herself and her skills, even though she felt as though she plateaued. He gave her that push to move beyond. And in the latter two episodes, Mio Ayama, she's a rich girl who ends up becoming a commoner because her father passed away and her mother has to work. However, she still works to put on airs that she's still rich. However, he helps her realize that, she doesn't have to maintain this facade to keep the memory of her dad alive, that she has to essentially be her own person to move forward and, helps, as you said, help them overcome their struggles. But I like thinking on it. It also helps him because it's inferred because he's just in he just sticks his face in his knockoff PSP and just plays these types of games. He has no interest in the real world. It helps him in his actual social skills to force him to interact with these other people. However, I think it's also a bit more tragic too because again, he doesn't really interact with these real people, and yet he's forced to make these romantic links with these different individuals. And even though he has to do it in a video game, it's very different when you have to do it in real life. And it's not really addressed. I guess it's just like inferred that he's going to be, or that he has to deal with some of these issues on his own. Where I don't know if it goes this way in the series. It seems as though it's not going to go that way, but it's an avenue to where they can explore where like he actually begins to have these feelings for this person that he has to essentially conquer, and then he kisses them and they forget everything. It's sort of, I can see that being a tragic loss on him, where he has to essentially because it's not him just opening themselves up. Sorry, it's not just him having to open the girls up, but he has to sort of expose and become intimate himself as well. And he has to do this repeatedly with these women that he has to essentially capture. And again, like with this I want to say this anime, it reminded me a little bit of some animes like Ray Zero, or some other isekai animes like Log Horizon, or I'm sorry, that's not that, I guess that's a reverse isekai, or another isekai like I'm trying to think, Slime, Shield Hero. Whereas you have your video gamer being sent into the game, where as you said earlier, it addresses. I like to parallel it with Ray Zero, where like Ray Zero, it mainly addresses the mindset of the otaku, and essentially deconstructs that and tries to show its viewers, what's wrong with that type of personality and to try to build it up. Whereas with this one, it's more of a highlight of, these type of people exist, and this is what would happen if they were essentially thrust into their own game. And it doesn't seem to go in as deep as what Ray Zero does, but it is an interesting take on a that type of genre where it's like, let's take this type of video game character and put them in their video game.
Yeah, it does make sense. And this does have like 3 seasons, I think I mentioned before, of
Yeah,
plus an OVA, so like 36 episodes of 12 episode series. So we just watched the first three. So like you alluded to, like a potential plot point in the future of that he actually does develop feelings for one of the girls he's trying to capture. And of course, as soon as he kisses them, that they're just going to forget him. So he basically has to build up from ground zero again, even though he already has those established relationships or feelings for that person already. And the manga that it's based off on was created by or written by Tamaki Wakaki, and it has like 26 volumes starting back in 2008 going up to 2014. So not to say that it didn't have plenty of source material to write on, but not
yeah,
surprised that this was very much a beloved franchise or series at the time. It's just weird to see that. I mean, everything that you just mentioned is true, is that it's a snapshot of like a culture that it doesn't really delve much into, because as it stands now, it's just really shallow, in my opinion.
yeah,
Is that, he gets kind of this know it superiority complex, and detached from the real world. And we talked about his personality being off putting and not, I forgot what that term is being attracted to like digital people, or what that's
yeah.
actually called.
And that's one thing that I wish that they, as you said, like the show is just very shallow. They don't really explore that. They don't. I mean, he just says, "I just like 2D girls." They don't really. I mean, again, it's just the first 3 episodes, but I don't see them exploring why he prefers 2D girls or why he prefers video game rather than interacting with regular people on on a normal basis, things like that.
Yeah, I think they might do it in a like to keep with the shallowness of the show. I think they might do it with a very shallow explanation of oh he was bullied when he was a kid by a girl, and then like someone said oh well girls in video games are really shallow and you can interact with them on that level because they're not as complicated. Because even in the I watched the dub for I didn't even
Yeah,
watch the sub for the 3 episodes, but with the dub he explains like in the first opening scene is that real girls are just complicated and it's easy to path out and find the right options for the girls in his games. And that kind of just leads into like a commentary by itself is that he sees real people in the same way that he sees the video game girls that he's trying to pursue. So it's kind of even like an extra layer of shallowness to it.
yeah,
And that way is that all his know-how, and he kind of saying like his intelligence of the game is helping him to apply it to real world application, but that's really delusional, essentially, that you think you can treat people like characters of a video game. Yeah, right. And again, like, I think this definitely could use like a remake and to delve a little bit more into that, like maybe write out the characters a little bit more deftly to make it a little bit more of a commentary of gamer culture, especially given how gamers have kind of taken over the world. Gamers
yeah.
rise up, hashtag. Um, um, but yeah, Sam, I think that if we're going to ask the question if this the world God only knows is sus or expect, is that I definitely suss it out. Sorry, it's not sus. I've been playing too much Among Us, but it's very. I suspect it to be basically still following the trend of what is set up in the 3 episodes. Again, 3 episode test is very functionally sound because it puts all studios usually put all their budget up front to sway viewers to keep
Yeah.
watching, as well as just setting up the inciting incident and rising action of a story. But yeah, I'm very suspect of the series. How about you, Sam?
I would say, like the reasons why you have suspect, I would put that as my expectations because, as you said, the show is like, hey, these are our characters. This is the premise. It's mainly going to be slapstick, ha ha ha. This guy's, it's basically like I feel as though, like I'm expecting what I'm given. And even though I personally, if I watch it, it's going to be for background brainless dribble, just for laughs, nothing to really write home about. So I would say like that's why it's an expect for me. I don't feel as though that the show is trying to trick me into thinking that it's going to be better than what it is. It's like it's not going to be any better than this. So just have your laughs and be on about your day.
Okay, then I see that point. Yeah, then I would say like a little bit more aligning with your ruling is that I'm more suspect because it feels like it might get worse. um,
I would say that's fair because I think season 3 apparently instead of loose souls it's supposed to be like goddess souls that he's supposed to be capturing. So yeah, it gets worse. I think.
yeah, so that's why I'm yeah, suspect. But oh yeah, I even
Yeah.
forgot to mention like you're right about the comedy aspects. Like it's not to say that it's solid comedy, but they definitely go into the physical comedy of some of the characters and the exaggerations of it. So it definitely falls in the genre of a rom-com, romantic comedy, as well
Hmm.
as like the not sci-fi, but supernatural elements, somewhat of a harem aspect to it because the girls is pursuing a group of girls, but again, their memories are wiped. So, however, that's going to progress if they do actually become love interests down the road, and or maybe they even like, oh, their relationship was so strong, their memories didn't completely wipe. Which there are hints of that at the first end of the first episode is like
Yeah.
the sprinter girl, kind of like blushes at him, even though she has no memory of him.
Hmm.
So it's really interesting to see. Not sure if I'm going to revisit it, but you'll revisit it. So tell me if it does go from passable to worse.
Just throwing that out there is like, I know you're enough. You're gonna revisit it. I will have to say though, like my favorite comedy scene was when, because with Ellie's, the demon girl, she, because the way that all these shows run out, she has to live with the main dude just in case she finds a loose soul. She needs him around, and she makes up a story that she is his illegitimate sister because his dad slept around, and she had a letter and everything too. So she ends up going to his family's house, and his mother, bro, when his mother read the letter, it was, I just loved it because apparently she used to be a biker gang member, and she was all prim and proper when uh, they came into her little restaurant or to her cafe, and you thought that she was a very well-read woman. I'm not saying that biker gang members can't be well-read, but like it made it seem as though like she came from like a college background or whatever. And when she had read the letter, she took her glasses off, broke them in her hand, and like called his dad up on the phone, and it was just hilarious. I loved that scene.
Yeah, the mom is a good side character, and apparently, I'm glad that they're going to keep that kind of family dynamic because the second episode is called "Demon of a Sister," so there is a, I guess, potential romantic interest in that, given that they're a male female couple, and then the third episode is "Drive My Car" because he does uh, pretend to be the chauffeur of the socialite rich girl, trying to get her to basically come to terms with like, no,
Mm.
you're a commoner now, so you should not be acting like a snooty tsundere kind of character. But one last thing I want to mention before you give us before I ask you if you want to wrap up things. But yeah, so
Mm.
the world God only knows is available on Crunchyroll, and that's where I watched it. How about you?
Yes, it was Crunchyroll for me as well. I think if it's on Crunchyroll, it's on Verve too. But yeah, I watched it on Crunchyroll too.
Yeah, Verb is a equally valid site to get. Yeah, so I would say if we're going to keep covering series, it's going to be Verb, Crunchyroll, and High Dive, and some a little bit on the side of Hulu. But yeah, Sam, but that's going to wrap up our discussion of this
Hmm.
2010 anime. So do you want to say anything before we sign off?
Jay, I just want to say I can see the ending at hand.